Alright guys, welcome to Box Office Addict. We are here looking at the weekend for Creed 3, which overperformed, quite frankly. It did way above expectations, and I think is now solidified as just a new franchise that's a continuation of Rocky, which is actually an anomaly when you think about franchises like this, but we'll get into that when we get to the film. Let's start from the bottom and work our way up. So there's nothing really notable to talk about when it comes to stuff like Knock at the Cabin, 80 for Brady. They're pretty much done. Even Magic Mike 3. Just a bunch of films that haven't been performing that well after their first weekend or so. Puss in Boots: The Last Wish is still on a roll. It's at 453 million worldwide after a terrible opening weekend. So kudos to DreamWorks in this movie. I mean, honestly, at this point, it has to be a success and get great reviews. Operation Fortune opened to 3.1 million. That's pretty damn terrible, but what was expected, although it's made 33 million worldwide. Okay, on to Avatar, which is still holding fairly well, 26% drop. Obviously, it's not going to pass Top Gun's domestic total. I'd say 680 million's possible with the way it's going. But it's at 2.28 million worldwide, so it's just a little under 20 million, 19 million really, before it reaches 2.3 billion, which I think is the end point for this. It might come in a little bit below that, but you got to think it has another 10 million to make in the States, and it should be able to make that up with it running for a while. I don't think they're going to pull this out of theaters for a while. Jesus Revolution had a fairly steep drop at 45%. It's at 8.6 million this weekend. We're at $30 million for that domestically after its good opening weekend of $15 million. So it isn't overperforming, nothing impressive. Actually, let's check where Megan's at the international box office. So Megan's pretty much wrapped up too at 172. Okay, Demon Slayer, the new Demon Slayer movie opened at $10 million. That's once again showing the popularity of anime in the States. The problem is these movies always open well and then nobody goes after the first weekend. Pretty much all of the fans go for the first 2 weeks, and that lets you know how big the fan base is. And the normies never rush out to go see stuff like this. Still 35 million worldwide. It should be able to make over 100 million. I imagine it's still got money to make in international numbers. Cocaine Bear had a 52% drop. That's a pretty decent drop, but it's not terrible. Puts the film at 41 million domestic and 52 million worldwide. Not sure what the budget of this is. I'm going to guess it's over 20 million. So it's doing okay. I don't know if it'll do much better than... I mean, it should be able to reach $60 million. If it's at 41 now. Maybe 65 million. So not a terrible performance. Once again, Ant-Man 3 is just doing really bad. It's hard to spin this into a positive. Another major drop, 61%. You're hoping that the drops are going to slow down gradually as time goes on. But if you see here, we're still having 60% plus drops every weekend. So it's not even at 200 million yet. This thing opened at 106 million, 120 million over 4 days, and we're 3 weekends in, and we're at 186 million. And I don't know if this can pass. I don't think it will. I don't think this is going to pass Ant-Man and the Wasp. I really don't. It's past the first Ant-Man domestically, which made 180 million a long time ago, like 2015. And then internationally, it's still 100 million away, but I don't know if this thing makes... I don't think it's going to make 600 million. I think 500 million plus is probably where this ends up. Maybe 600 million if it's at the lucky. So this is like Thor again, where the third film... Well, that was a fourth film, but the follow-up is making less than the previous film. I don't think this will make as much as Ant-Man and the Wasp. Let's go back to that one. Even though that film didn't do great... it wasn't a huge hit, but still, it made 216 million domestic and 622 million worldwide. That's the question here. Can Ant-Man 3 make 622 million worldwide? And even to reach 216, um, it's 30 million away from that, but I don't think it's going to make a lot more than that. I mean, I was expecting this to make 250 to 300 million, definitely over 300 million is I'm sure what Marvel wanted or Disney wanted. So this is just bad. The reviews were bad. The movie's not performing well. Um, it just is what it is. There really isn't much commentary to do on this. I mean, if they'd made a better movie, it probably would have done better. I really think it's that simple. Okay, now into Creed 3. I am fascinated by this. So the prediction going into the weekend was around 38 to 40 million, and then Friday the numbers were huge. It came in at 22 million, and then that pushed the predictions to 50 to 51 million plus. Now in the actuals we have 58 million. So this thing almost made 60 million dollars. And then it has a 41 international, 100 million worldwide, unadjusted for inflation. This is the biggest opening for a film in the Rocky franchise. Obviously, the Rocky movies in the 80s that made like $300 million. Those were bigger hits than the Creed movies with inflation. So if I remember correctly, I think Creed 1 opened to like 29 million and made like, I think around 115 domestically. We could check that. Made 109 and it opened to 29 million on a $35 million budget, made 173 million. Very critically acclaimed movie. Was a big moment for Michael B. Jordan and for Ryan Coogler. Sly Stallone gets an Oscar nomination. A lot of people thought he was going to win that year. Sort of a legacy sequel. And you got to think about this. How many times do they screw up these legacy sequels with the Star Wars franchise? And this isn't like James Bond where they reboot the character. This is continuity connected to the first Rocky from 1976. So when you think about that, we're going to be like 50 years into this franchise. We're not really far away, which is kind of amazing. A 50-year franchise that has a single continuity. Also love that it's Creed 2, Creed 3. It's sort of like the John Wick films right now. I like my numbers. So it was Creed 2 that made 115 million. That's right. It opened to 35 million, slightly better than Creed 1. Did not get the same level of reviews as Creed 1. But in general made 214 million. Budget was $50 million. Coogler didn't direct this one. But still, it got okay reviews. But now with 3, Michael B. Jordan's directorial debut, Jonathan Majors, Kang, playing his rival. So he's in the top 2 movies right now this weekend. He stars as the antagonist in both of them. And now we have a pretty substantial opening. So I would compare this to the John Wick franchise, where the first film opened okay, did well, made like $90 million. Then the second film made $170 million. And then the third film made over $300 million. It made like $326 million. If you look at this, we have, the first film makes a little under 200 million, but not a big budget. The second film, medium budget, does over 200 million. And then now we have this film with the $75 million budget, probably a lot of it going to Jordan. Sylvester Stallone isn't in this movie. And here we are with 100 million worldwide opening. So this should make over $300 million worldwide, you would think. I mean, even if it doesn't, let's say if this just makes $250 million at the end of the day, that's still really good numbers. They should still make a profit on 75 million. But honestly, with the 58 million opening, I mean, this should blow the other 2 Creed movies out of the water domestically. This should make 150 million, if not more, just domestically. So this is impressive. This is impressive. The film got decent reviews, slightly better reviews than the second film. But going back to the franchise thing, this is like an anime, We like Apollo, so we like his son. And the fact that Stallone and Rocky were able to pass the torch to Michael B. Jordan. And now he is running the franchise, not just in front of the camera, but he's the one behind the camera. And you can have these kind of numbers now. And now you think, okay, we could have Creed 4, Creed 5, Creed 6. This could be a 50-year-long legacy franchise that's still getting good reviews. There's clearly still a fan base that's going out to see it. And the best thing about this is they're not going crazy with the budgets. Like, you go from 30 million to 50 million to 70 million. You go up by about 20 million a movie, which just makes sense. Now, hopefully that doesn't mean we get to a point where like the fourth film cost $100 million. I think that might be a little crazy. But still, this just shows that you can make these medium budget franchise films that don't have to cost $250 million, and they can get positive reception. They can keep the fan base, and you can keep making sequels. And oh my God, you can call them 2, 3, 4. John Wick and this franchise prove this, that this is very possible, and this is the kind of direction that Hollywood needs to go in. They don't want to take the risk on maybe making a sequel to a film that didn't make $500 million in the way that John Wick and Creed 1 didn't do. But people like the movies. And if you have good filmmakers and people behind it, you can keep producing stuff out of that and keep getting people going to the theater. So that's the lesson to take from this. Is Hollywood needs to quit trying to make Ant-Man and the Wasp, and they need to make more movies like this. And I think if they did that, they would find themselves in a much better position overall, where you have moments like this where your movies keep opening higher because you didn't set the bar so crazy high that, oh, the movie has to open to 200 million. Look at these other franchises like Jurassic World. You set the bar so high, each film's going to have diminishing return. The Star Wars sequels. And I know we're talking about a lot more money, but you have to think about the longevity of these things as opposed to just chasing the money quickly, because you can kill a brand. Whereas right here, this just shows you with some level of quality control, which is what Sylvester Stallone has had with this franchise, you're able to keep the franchise alive decades down the road. And you end up really never losing money. I don't think they've ever lost money on a Rocky movie. Even ones that didn't perform as well, like Rocky 5. Like, there's never been a Rocky movie that lost money. That's what you want. In the merchandising and stuff too, you got to think. So that's what I would want if I was producing stuff. I'd want something that I could keep making money off of for a long time and still has public interest. So kudos to that. Who is the studio behind that? United Artists. That's right. Yeah. And I know Sly Stallone has issues there, and there's a lot of drama, but still, it's hard not to just look at that as a real positive. Um, I guess there's nothing else. I mean, Creed was really the story of the week. A lot of the other stuff is kind of fallen aside. But what I see here is variety. If you look, you have Creed as the opening, then you have your Marvel movie, then you have Cocaine Bear, then you have an anime, then you have Jesus Revolution, a religious film, then Avatar's in there, then Operation Fortune, which I'm assuming is a British film. Then Puss in Boots, you have an animated film. Magic Mike, an adult film skewed towards women. 80 for Brady, an adult film skewed towards female audiences. Knock at the Cabin, horror, psychological thriller. And then Megan, another sort of like comedy thriller. But if you just look here, we have different genres of films. We have different types of films. And not all of them are doing great, but like Creed, Cocaine Bear's doing okay. Jesus Revolution, I'm sure, didn't have a huge budget. Avatar's huge. Puss in Boots, I would say, is a hit. So if you mix it together, there's diversity here, and I think we're kind of going in a more positive direction if the weekends show more signs of things like this, and you can get more people going out to the theater and provide them more variety, and stick to things like that. I really think this is a positive. This is a really positive weekend, and collectively, each film is putting up some numbers. In context, Ant-Man's numbers are really bad, but Cocaine Bear and Avatar still being out, and then Creed having this great opening, it feels a little bit like it did before the pandemic, in some ways, looking at these numbers right now. So that's really refreshing, and that's really nice. But unfortunately, I do think we're still going to see disappointments and collapses as the weekends go on into the year. So I think this is just like a little respite before we get back into it. Still, though, awesome opening for Creed. I still think the highest grossing Rocky film is Rocky 4. Let's check that out. So the first Rocky, just to go through the history of this, made 117 million. Now, I've read reports that worldwide the movie made a lot more than that. That's domestic. Obviously, we won't bring up inflation because that's just a waste of time. Take forever. 85 million for Rocky 2 in 1979. Huge numbers. Rocky 3 comes out, makes 125 million. I'm sure that isn't what it actually made. I'm sure it made more than that. but domestically 125 million, big hit, Mr. T. Then we have Rocky 4, which came out the same year as Rambo 2. They both make 300 million worldwide. So Sylvester Stallone had the two biggest films that year. And I mean, that's insane. It's one of the biggest, like, apexes in a career. That one makes 127 million domestically. Then you have Rocky 5, which still made 120 million. I believe the budget of this movie's $40 million. Did not perform well domestically. Isn't a liked movie overall. Then Rocky Balboa, we bring the franchise back. $24 million budget, makes 155 million worldwide, 70 million domestic. And then we already looked at the Creed numbers. So that's just good stuff right there. That at one point in the 80s, this was a franchise that was, you know, highest grossing film of the year. And here we are. And, I thought the Rocky movies were dead. I'm a huge Rocky fan, and I thought there wasn't going to be any more Rocky movies pretty much my entire childhood after Rocky 5. So what we have coming down the pipeline soon, some limited releases. Blackberry, Super Mario Brothers is coming in April. I think that's going to be very, very big. Paw Patrol, the Mighty Movie, The Holdovers. Yeah, I think this is going. It is very possible this opens over $100 million. It would not surprise me. Who knows? I don't know. It's a good question. Anyway, tell me what you think in the comments. What do you think about this performance? What do you think the domestic total of Creed 3 will be based off this opening weekend? And do you think it'll hold well going into next weekend?